Red Dead Redemption 2 recently crossed its 3rd year anniversary, which is more than enough time for even the greatest games to die down, removed from the public's consciousness entirely. Yet here we are, 3 years later, still finding new details, boasting about its impact on gaming, critiquing its many flaws, and singing its many praises from the peak of the gaming landscape. It's a game that had to live up to the impossible development of a project that became known as Red Dead Redemption, and against all odds, it succeeded. A breath of fresh goddamn air in year after year of stale open world formulas, so mind-numbingly afraid to innovate. However, just like how Red Dead Redemption 1 laid down an almost impossible benchmark to follow up upon, I feel like Red Dead Redemption 2 sealed the fate of a worthy sequel. Especially with the departure of Dan Houser and many of the other higher-ups of Rockstar, those with decades of experience and unrivaled talent. But hey, let's forget about that depressing fact for a second and entertain the idea of a follow-up, and where I think it should go. I'll begin by tackling the most common requests from the community on where the story should proceed. This has to be the most widespread desire for a Red Dead 3. Going further back in time to explore more of the Van der Linde gang's past. And honestly, I have no idea why. To me, the Van der Linde story is complete. We've seen all we should see. Their story was a vessel to explore the themes of civilization, taming the West, and the struggle to accept change. Going back to see more of their past just because we love these characters is not a valid reason to revisit them. I find it so much more interesting to go on a fishing trip with Arthur, Dutch and Hosea, and hearing their stories, their perspective of things, and how those events shaped them. That is way more impactful than hearing an event and then having another game where we actually see this event take place. Their history is already crafted, and it's there for those who want to listen. These actors have already done an incredible job alluding to past grandeur and failure. It'd almost be an injustice to feel the need to experience their history to justify its impact. Even with the little information we're given in Red Dead 1, it was carefully crafted to be vague enough to fill in the gaps yourself, and definitive enough to still have plenty of weight when you see the end of the gang. If we never got a Red Dead 2, it would still work. It just wouldn't have the immense emotional background that the prequel injected into the story. Plus, I don't think people would know what they're getting into by witnessing the characters' younger selves. Sure, at the beginning the gang stood for honour and stealing from the rich only to help the poor, but that all quickly turned sour, leading to them becoming one of the most ruthless gangs in the country. Remember how uncomfortable it was to experience the Strauss missions where Arthur has to collect debt from helpless and desperate people? That ruthlessness and immorality would embody most of the gang members at this time. We only got a glimpse of that in Red Dead 2, and then we got to see the best of Arthur, as he turns into a dying man who only wishes to leave some good behind. We see the same for John, who begins the game as a young, arrogant man, denying the responsibility of fatherhood and his commitment to Abigail, only to want nothing more than to provide both of them a normal life, which comes at the cost of the realization that the only way it could happen is if he's dead. Do we really want to see these characters as even worse than they were in the beginning? There would also be no redemption arc in that case, which is something already ingrained into the brand. John is my second favourite character in any media. Arthur is my third. I know, blasphemy, right? Relax. I recognise that Arthur is the better character thanks to evolved writing and technology, bringing him to life in ways we never thought we'd experience after watching the trailers. But I don't want to see these characters continued with, just because they're some of my favourite characters. I got the best and worst of both. They've left their stamp in gaming and there's nothing more to tell than we already know. However, now that the big players at Rockstar are gone, I feel that the corporate suits are going to go with the easiest option once they finally get to a Red Dead 3. And it's most likely going to do exactly what I've just contested. This is another one that doesn't make sense to me. I don't believe there's a story to tell with Jack post Red Dead 1. His character was used to close the Van der Linde story, and also to inject some poetic irony into the ending. That irony, of course, being that Jack had the best chance of a normal life, being able to read, write, and be a decent rancher. Yet the extreme measures used to kill his father turned him into a revenge-seeking gunslinger. A lot of people like to believe that Jack just settled down and wrote a book. It's okay to think more optimistically about the ending, but it's left ambiguous on purpose. If I understand Red Dead and its themes the way I think I do, I believe things don't go well for Jack. There's a tiny overlooked moment after he shoots Ross, where he glances at his gun, which I believe signifies him shooting his chances for a normal life. You don't kill a former government official, one that was seen as a hero by the public, one who had the authority over lawmen and the US Army, and then expect a happy ending. Especially considering Edgar's wife and brother are witnesses. Both games had one common theme, that vengeance will only bring tragedy. Arthur understood this. John / the player gave in to temptations to get revenge on Micah, sparking the events of an entire game and the death of John. After all this, it's hard to accept that Red Dead 1's message is revenge is a fool's game, but it's okay now because Ross killed John. Another potential story I've seen thrown around is the life of young Landon Ricketts. It's difficult to not want something along those lines, especially because he's my favourite side character in Red Dead 1. But the problem lies mainly in the fact that he wasn't an outlaw. Now, I would love a game where you played as him anyway, but losing the outlaw aspect of Red Dead would be a deal breaker for 95% of the fanbase. Here's one that I came up with from the top of my head. I feel like there's an interesting story to be told in a Native American side. These games have a rich connection with the Native American aspect of the Wild West. So maybe there's an interesting story perspective you could form there, especially around the time of the war. Then again, it would have less of that outlaw iconography that we all love and adore. But you could always blend that into it. Kinda like how Assassin's Creed 3 blended the Assassins vs Templars narrative with early American history. I feel like the story would work better as a spin-off rather than a mainline entry, but I think there's a lot of potential there regardless. What I truly want from a Red Dead 3 is an entirely new story with new characters and themes, set in the prime of the Wild West, not the end. Having two games about the decline of the Wild West and the birth of civilization was an incredibly fresh take on the Western, especially in a genre very few games take a chance on. But I feel like we've exhausted every aspect of that angle. Now it's time to go back to the roots. Sure, on the surface it may seem simplistic and predictable, as we've seen nearly everything this genre has to offer, but there's nothing wrong with being similar on the surface level. The complex story and nuance can come from underneath, and that's what matters. Thanks to Red Dead Revolver, Redemption 1 and 2, Rockstar has a monopoly on this genre in gaming, as they seem to have scared all the big studios from daring to dive in. But even so, it could be 10 years before we even see a glimpse of Red Dead 3. Hell, they're struggling to get GTA 6 off the ground if the leaks are anything to go by. Despite all that, I hope when they finally get to Red Dead 3, they will still have enough artistic integrity to not pick the easy option. Or just give us Max Payne 4. That works too.
I think I can still do a job. What have I got to lose? Apart from the weight. Very funny. Ha ha. Yes, that is a fake laugh, you jerk.